So this topic comes back around to something we started the semester with. In the beginning of the semester, we talked about how fruits are made, basically the relationship between flowers and fruits, the fact that fruits result from a fertilized ovary with seeds inside, one or more seeds. And this topic is meant to kind of revisit that idea with more of a perspective about diversity and function. So an interesting plant to start us off with, this is a tree called jaboticaba from South America. And it has an interesting feature where it grows flowers on the woody trunk of this tree. And so this is something that happens, I'm familiar with it in a few tropical groups and just a different way. So there were flowers on the stem of this woody plant, and now they develop into these actually edible, juicy fruits on here. And we'll kind of talk about fruits and why they're there and what they do for the plant here. So just a little bit of a review. When I cover fruits, some people prefer to subdivide fruits into a whole bunch of categories. I like to keep them in relatively few categories, really just these functional categories, major differences. So these big categories of dry fruits or fleshy fruits. And then within the category of dry fruits, remember we had dehiscent or indehiscent fruits. So probably some of the bigger spreads of fruit types are shown here. On the left, we have a dry indehiscent fruit of some of our plants in the grass family. This is the grain called rye. There's a single seed inside of there. A grain of rye is its own fruit resulting from an ovary. And the grain fruit type is a special kind, a little bit modified version of an achene, where in this case, the seed is actually fused to the fruit wall. So indehiscent and then also just one kind of fused entity. But if you want to describe this properly, it is a fruit, and this is a mature ovary, is what you're looking at there. The dry dehiscent fruits have an ovary that typically contains a few seeds, sometimes many, or at least I should say more than one. So few to many seeds inside of one of these ovaries that develops into a dehiscent fruit. Kind of an exceptional case I've chosen here in the poppies. Poppies have kind of a salt shaker sort of seed dispersal. So these are the seeds that come out. You can get poppy seeds on a bagel or a muffin. And this is the capsule that poppy seeds come from, and they shake out of these little pores that are kind of obscured behind these flaps here, but there would be pores at the top of this that they shake out of. So it still breaks open, that makes it dehiscent, and the seeds come out that way. And then over here on the right, we have an example of a fleshy fruit. If you remember, the fleshy fruit category contained drupes and berries. They could have one seed each. They could have many seeds each in either of those categories. And we'll kind of think about what the advantages of these different strategies are. One way to think about them, this third question on here, is the dispersal unit a fruit or a seed? So we'll see some cases where it's actually the fruit that disperses. Here's one already. This is a fruit. As I mentioned, the fruit and the seed are inseparable, and so they get dispersed together. That's a fruit dispersing, meaning that each flower can produce only one dispersal unit, as opposed to this one. This whole capsule in the poppy results from one flower, and that one flower has hundreds of seeds that all get dispersed on their own from there. And then fleshy fruits, it depends. But in this case, if an animal picked up and ate one of these berries, that berry might cause the seeds inside to get dispersed to the same place. So we'll think about them. All right, so just a reminder, of course, the parts of the flower that develop into fruits, those were the ovaries. So this is a plant with an apocarpus gynoecium. The greener bits toward the center are the gynoecia. Many of them separate. You can see some are sliced so that they actually show you the ovule in there. Ovary wider at the bottom, and then in this case a long style, and then a little bit different colored stigma at the top where the pollen would land. And then each of those, because they're separate ovaries, can develop into separate fruits. This was the case we saw that would develop them into an aggregate fruit type. So I like this diagram. I don't know, it's just visually appealing as much as anything, but this is a wide variety of different fruit types based on how these flowers are put together differently. So different kinds of fruits can develop depending on your flowers, whether they were superior ovary, inferior ovary, separate carpels, fused carpels, one ovule per ovary, several ovules per ovary, and so on. And some of our big hits are on here. So Keens and nuts, they've got them separately here. I treat them the same. Caryopsis was that grain fruit type. We've seen legumes in the bean family. Some examples of capsule, and then this is a follicle. Well, we'll get into the details here. So some dry indehiscent, dry dehiscent, and then a whole bunch of fleshy fruit types around. And around the farther outside, you see the illustrations of some plants that might be familiar to you, including some edible plants.